welcome to this explainer. Today, we are unpacking the incredibly fascinating and honestly quite complex S-DMT framework. This is a theory that proposes our universe isn't just some random collection of particles floating around in an empty void, but is actually, fundamentally, a geometric, musical structure. So if you've ever wondered if there's a deeper, hidden architecture to reality, well, you've definitely come to the right explainer. Let's dive in. Okay, let's start with a really provocative idea, straight from our source material. Imagine if the universe wasn't made of empty space at all. Instead, what if it was a geometric fluid vibrating at a very specific, unified frequency? Think of it almost like a giant cosmic tuning fork that's been struck. And literally everything we see, touch, and experience is just the resonance of that initial strike. I know it sounds a bit like science fiction, but the math we're going to look at today argues that this is exactly how reality operates. So here is the fundamental problem we're tackling today. On one hand, we have the standard model of classical physics. Now, it's been incredibly successful, sure, but it relies on a continuous manifold and a whopping 19 unexplained free parameters. Basically, these are just numbers we have to plug in by hand to make the equations work. But on the flip side, the S-DMT theory proposes a radical alternative, a unified, discrete, zero-parameter reality. It suggests that mass isn't just an extrinsic property that gets added on, but an eigenmode of the geometry itself. To make sense of all this dense theoretical framework, we've broken our explainer down into 6 specific sections. We'll hit the free parameter problem, the cosmic tuning fork, the 369 engine, building the periodic table, the geometry of life, and finally wrap up with a zero-parameter universe. All right, let's jump right into section 1, the free parameter problem, and the fundamental flaws in modern physics. You know, the S-DMT framework argues that a true theory of everything really shouldn't need a bunch of external numbers or free parameters added by hand. Just think about the mass of an electron or the fine structure constant. Standard physics basically just accepts them as brute facts. But S-DMT argues that these numbers absolutely must emerge from a closed, three-dimensional shape that contains itself without any singularities. Specifically, it points to the topology of a Klein-bottle. In a perfect theory, reality shouldn't need a user manual to set the dials, right?
According to the theory, there is only one substance that can fulfill this wild geometric requirement without just collapsing into a singularity, and that is thixotropic superfluid hydrogen. Now let's break that down for a second. Thixotropic essentially means it's a fluid that solidifies under stress but flows when it's released, kind of like cosmic memory foam. This medium acts as the very canvas of reality. It allows the universe to resist collapse by jamming together under pressure while still supporting the standing waves that you and I perceive as solid matter. Moving right along to section 2, the cosmic tuning fork. Let's look at how this fluid actually moves. Our sources pinpoint a very specific, fascinating number here, 59,319 hertz. This is identified as the base clock of the entire universe. Now, where does this hyper-specific number even come from? Well, it represents the exact number of nodes in a 39-cubed topological lattice. You see, according to SMDT, the universe isn't continuous at all. It's a discrete grid, a literal geometric matrix. And 59,319 hertz? That's the global refresh rate of that grid. It is the fundamental integer heartbeat of reality. And this 59,319 hertz vibration is definitely not random. It's what the framework calls the envelope zero fundamental drone. Think of it as the continuous reference pitch of the entire geometric vacuum. So what does that make matter? Well, all particles, whether it's an electron or a quark, are simply higher harmonics, overtones, of this one single unchanging frequency. When a particle exists, it's really just this baseline geometric fluid humming at a more complex, mathematically locked pitch. Okay, on to section 3, the 369 engine, and how this tuning fork actually builds physical space. The framework describes this incredible cosmic breathing cycle called a Jitterbug rotation, and it operates in 3 distinct phases. First up is the Julia phase, which is an outward spatial expansion. You can think of it as the melody of creation. Second is the Mandelbrot phase, which is an inward contraction and densification. That's the harmony that actually builds matter. And third is striction, which is a neutral pause that essentially stabilizes the whole geometry. The universe is just constantly oscillating through these 3 states to project reality. Now, this breathing cycle is strictly mathematical.
Exactly 3 topological twists in the fluid are required to overcome friction and create a beam of light, or a spatial diagonal. Then, when that space hits the edge of the Klein-bottle, 3 converging diagonals collide and collapse back into a knot of dense matter. 3 twists make space. 3 space beams make matter. 3 times 3 is 9. The entire universe operates flawlessly in base 9 mathematics.
When we look at this golden cross lattice from the source material, we can really see how these Jitterbug phases, the Julia expansion and Mandelbrot contraction, completely govern the density field in the thixotropic plenum. Notice the 1 Hz mass gap highlighted here. That is absolutely crucial. It's the fundamental vibration required to prevent the entire geometric envelope from just cracking under the immense pressure of existence. And get this geometric engine isn't just for quantum mechanics. The exact same Mandelbrot and Julia phase alternations map directly onto the macro world. Just look at the planetary bodies and orbital resonances of our own solar system reflecting this discrete scaling. Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, they aren't just random rocks falling in a gravity well. They are localized, standing waves, macro-solitons following the exact same rules as subatomic particles. Which brings us to Section 4, building the periodic table, and how geometric resonance constructs chemistry. Standard chemistry usually views the periodic table as just an empirical chart, right? We basically just keep smashing atoms together to see how high we can count. But S-DMT claims that 118 is the absolute maximum topological limit of elements. Why? Because it represents the exact moment the 39 strata geometric structure is completely full. Any attempt to build an element beyond 118, like a hypothetical 119, would force the geometry to shatter, causing the fluid to fatally fracture. So here is the real takeaway. Instead of random chemical species, the elements are mapped as a deterministic stack of geometric tiles. The sources literally compare it to stacking mahjong tiles, extruded right into 3D space. The forward Julia axis pushes the volume outward, adding a proton. The backward Mandelbrot axis adds topological drag, which gives us a neutron. And when the stack gets a bit too high, the diagonal striction axis forces the geometry to twist into new electron orbitals. It's an architectural blueprint, not just a random list. Let's scale things up even more. For Section 5, the geometry of life, or biological math. Now, this is where it gets really wild. The theory proposes that human embryonic development isn't just some separate biological quirk. Instead, it is the exact physical rendering of these fractal geometric divisions happening in the fluid. The zygote is the anchor point. Cellular division or cleavage is pure Jitterbug fractal divergence. The holoblastocyst stage is the flawless biological execution of the Mandelbrot cavity. And the transition to a fetus? That's the Julia phase extrusion, where geometric information bursts outward into a 3D asymmetric body. Biology is basically just physics rendering on demand. And finally, Section 6, a zero-parameter universe, and the philosophical closure of this whole framework. In this framework, literally every constant, force, and particle is a locked geometric invariant. Let's look at how this builds a closed system. The scale jump between dimensions is strictly 11.653. The temporal friction slowing the system down is exactly 0.172. The striction angle locking the fluid is 55.17 degrees. These are definitely not random numbers. They are the unavoidable structural requirements of a self-regulating Klein-bottle. There's absolutely no room for randomness or external fine-tuning here. There's a quote from the source material that just perfectly hits the nail on the head. The universe has no free parameters because it has no choice. Reality is an inevitable, self-regulating geometric shape that simply must exist exactly as it does. The universe isn't a collection of random parts that somehow happen to fall together perfectly. It is a rigid, thixotropic musical instrument, and the shape of that instrument dictates the only possible songs that can ever be played. So I'm going to leave you with this one final, thought-provoking question to ponder based on everything we've covered in today's explainer. If reality really is a zero-parameter lattice and human life is just the local rendering of that geometric math, where exactly does consciousness, choice, and free will fit into the equation? Are we the players of the game, or simply the math experiencing itself? Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible journey through the S-DMT framework. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.